My name's Dave Nielsen. It's really nice to be here. My background is actually in community, and this is actually my first talk talking about our new vector search capabilities. And so we'll see how it goes, but I'm really happy to be here and share with you what we've recently released. But the title of this talk is about the fact that with our new release, the vectors that we store, I'm just kind of jumping right to the punchline here. The vectors that we store are in with the document. So if you know anything about, MongoDB, we're a document model, and we actually store it all together in one document. So it makes it very easy for you when you're storing your vectors to store the vectors and the data together in one API call. So there's the punchline, and now we'll get into the rest of the talk. So there's a little bit about me as I lived here in Mountain View, and just down the road in Mountain View, and got a family, and that's what I work for. But in my work, I work on MongoDB, and as you probably know, MongoDB is a document model, which means we store our data in JSON structures, which we actually store in BSON, which is more performant, but you think of it as JSON. And so if you aren't familiar with MongoDB, that's what you need to know. It's a document model. It's not a SQL database. And you can use SQL to access the data, but that's really not the performant way to use MongoDB. So we do store all of our data in this document model. It's very natural and flexible. If you're already using your data in your web page and you have your relationships between your data and you want to store that data, you don't have to figure out which tables to separate your data into. You can just store it all in a JSON structure. And as I like to say, in the real world, data doesn't naturally fit in rows and columns, but it does very easily fit in a document, like a JSON structure. So, and it's very easy to change. You don't have to go and, fiddle with your schemas. We do allow you to apply a schema to your document. So if you do want that sort of structure laid over your data, you can use it, but it's not required. So it makes it very simple and easy and fast to use. And, instead of using objects and mapping them to lots of different tables, you simply take your objects and you store them in documents. So it's a very one-to-one relationship, much easier to get started and to intuitive for a developer using, JSON. Okay, so what is MongoDB Atlas? This is basically our MongoDB as a service. We call it a developer data platform because it extends beyond what you typically think of MongoDB to other data types. So we have, for example, search. We've had that for quite a while. We now have VectorSearch, and we have graphs and streams and all sorts of stuff. So there's a lot more there than just a document. So we're trying to meet all of your needs. And you get one query API, and you can access all of that. So it's very easy to get started and extend your knowledge to beyond just a document. Okay. So there's a lot there. And now, as of this month, we now have GA for our vector search. So that's, for those of you who might think of it as a vector database, well, we don't call it a vector database because it's just part of MongoDB Atlas. So it is a search capability, but it uses basically the same way you would use a vector database. So you should know this, but just real quick, what are vectors? It's just basically a bunch of representations of data and the related context based on a model that you apply to the data. It gives you a bunch of numbers, and that's basically how you search. Is you can't search with text, you search with numbers. So you're always taking your text and converting it to numbers, and then you search the relationships between those numbers. And so what is vector search? Basically, vector search uses these models, these machine learning models, to find results that are most similar. So this is very important if you're trying to remember a movie, for example. You don't remember the name, but you remember some characters or what it's like. And you can search based on similar words versus having to know the actual keywords that are in the title or in the description. So you're basically searching based on similarities or semantics. And it's very powerful. How does it work? Well, you take your data, you use some sort of encoder, which would be like, OpenAI or one of the other models, and you turn your data into vectors and you store it in a vector store. And that's basically what the vector database is. And we call those embeddings. Okay. And in MongoDB, those vectors are actually stored right in with the document. So like I said before, when you go and change your data and you then need to change the vectors, you can write that in one API call to update it all at once. You don't have to keep two different databases in sync at the same time. So it's very convenient and it's very practical. Just real quick, I wanted to point out that, for those, again, who are a little bit new to this subject, you're going to basically use your model both to save your data into the database so that it's saved as numbers. And then when you're querying that data, when you want to find similarities, you do the same thing. You have to turn your search keywords or sentences into vectors, and then you're going to search the database with those vector values. All right, so what are the use cases? There's lots of them. I mentioned semantic search. You're trying to find something similar, but you don't know the words. You can find it. It's very powerful. A Q&A system, sort of like ChatGPT, where you ask a question and then it's going to give you back some answers. This is really powerful when you take your own documentation or maybe internal systems of data in your company. You're trying to find some information, but you don't know exactly what you're looking for. You can quickly ask a question. My favorite one would be like, every year I'm like, oh gosh, it's time to update our healthcare. Which I don't even know what I have. Like, let me go find that in my company's documentation, and hopefully it will have found it based on the semantics of what I'm searching for. Anyway, there's a lot you can do there. Image searches, all sorts of different searches. What makes VectorSearch stand out? Well, like I said before, it's all integrated in one, so you can use the vector database along with what you're already using. In this case, it might be your document. It's one API call, and it's fully managed if you're using Atlas VectorSearch. We do have a CLI, by the way, where when you're developing on your laptop or your own system, you can use our CLI and tell it to install VectorSearch and Atlas Search both on your laptop so you can develop locally. It's not for production, it's just for development, but that way you're not always having to go out of your system to develop. Okay, so I thought I'd show you a little bit of a demo here. Now, basically what I'm going to show you, before I do that, this is this really cool thing I just want to point out. If you're ever kind of curious, is like, vectors are lots and lots of numbers, right? But you can kind of see it. If a vector only had 3 numbers, you could plot it in a chart like this. So if I were to, for example, search for the word apple, it'll show you what words are nearby. Okay, and so this is just a 3 vector value representation. But there might be hundreds or even over thousands of vectors, and each additional dimension basically gives you more accuracy. So that's essentially how those additional values help make it incredibly accurate. All right, so I've got some code that a friend of mine helped me develop, and it's just real simple. And you can go take a look at it yourself if you want. If you go to my GitHub repo or account at D Nielsen, and then just look for the MongoDB Atlas VectorSearch one, you'll be able to pull this down. And I've got it running. Actually, I've got it loaded up into my Visual Studio here. And what I just want to show you real quick, if you want to get started yourself, the first thing you do is you're going to go to Atlas, so MongoDB.com, and our SaaS offering there is called Atlas, and you'll sign up for an account. Very simple stuff. Once you create your account, then it's really simple. So just go do that. Then obviously you want to set up your development environment. In this case, I'm using Python. And then what we do, of course, is you need a model, right? And in our particular case, you could use an open source model. You could use OpenAI. I'm using OpenAI in this example. And so what I'm going to show you here is with OpenAI, what you're going to want to do is test to make sure you have your connections set up. So here you can see I've got the modules that I need, and I'm going to just go make sure that they're running here. Pretty simple stuff. I'm not using Colab, but I'll just run this just to get past this section here. And yeah, again, not using Colab. Okay, here I've simply imported the OpenAI modules and some other modules that are required. Okay, so here what we're doing is we are loading in my environmental variables. So this is like, if you are using OpenAI, you have to go to OpenAI, you need to get yourself a key, and you just load it in your environmental variables, your .env file. And here you can see we're just loading those up. It's very simple, very straightforward. This is the OpenAI API key. And so let's run that. Okay, so that loaded up successfully. Now what we're going to do is something very simple, but it's very powerful. So if I wanted to ask a question such as of ChatGPT, I might ask it, what, I had one earlier I was going to use, let's ask you, what shall I ask ChatGPT? What is a vector database? How about that? We just recently announced, so it probably doesn't know anything about us yet. So let's give that a shot. Okay, let's give that a shot. So what is a vector database? Taking a few seconds here to load up. A little bit longer than I would like it to take. Oh, there you go. Okay, a vector database is a type of database that is specifically designed to store and manage vector data. All right, brilliant. Okay, let's move on. So anyway, that's how it's very simple. I'm not using MongoDB here. I'm just using OpenAI. All right. Now, like I said before, you need to be able to take your data and you need to be able to store it as vectors. Okay, so that's what's happening here. And what we're doing is we are going to first set up using OpenAI. Hold on a second. The module, and that ran. And then here I'm going to take the word apple, and I'm going to convert it into vectors. So there we go. It ran pretty quick. And you can see down here, these are the vectors that this particular model, which is called Text Embedding ADA 02, is creating. So in this particular case, this particular model has 1,536 values as a part of the vector. Okay, and so once you've done that, you want to make sure that you're always using the same model for all of your data. Otherwise, it's going to not be the same length in your database. Okay, so that's how you create your embeddings, and then of course you'd store that into your database. You store that into MongoDB. All right. So now we've got ourselves a model that we've been able to interact with it. We can use it to convert our data into vectors. And now let's go take a look at what we're going to do with Atlas. Okay, now, before I go any further here, let me just show you that, let's see here. I don't need that. There we go. Okay, so what would you do if you went to Atlas? So first of all, again, I'm not going to bother you with like showing you how to log in and stuff, but we have projects. You would choose your project. I just have one project here. And within that project, I have one database, which is basically a cluster. And it's called Cluster MFlix, because I named it after the database that I'm actually using inside this, or I'm sorry, the collection of data that I'm using inside of this particular demo. But what I wanted to show you was that if you go here to Browse Collections, now, I have already loaded this data into the database. I got this data from MongoDB. I'm using a sample set of data. So this is very easy for you to try if you want to try yourself. I've already loaded it in just to save time, as it does take a little while. But if you go to this page and you haven't loaded any data, you will click, if you click on collections, it will say explore your data and you can load a sample data set. Okay, this is just a screenshot just to show you what it would look like. So this is very easy for you to get started. In fact, that's really why I'm here tonight, is just to show you that if you want to play around with a vector database and OpenAI, this is very easy for you to do. It's MongoDB easy, okay? That's how easy it is. All right. So what happens is it's going to load in these different collections. Now, again, collections are like tables. If you're not familiar with the document model, these are essentially like tables, but we call them collections. And you'll notice here that there's one called sample mflix. Okay, this is just a movie database. All right, it's a collection of movies. All right, but if you take a look at it, if I open it up here, inside you'll notice that there's some different collections, and one is called movies. Okay, it's just a bunch of movie data. But there's also one called embedded movies. So in here you can see that it's the same data, but at the bottom you see the vectors. Okay, and so you can see there's a lot of them because it's like 1,500 and whatever. So, but you can see that the vectors are stored within the document, all in one. So when you go to update your data, you're writing it in one transaction. It's all there or it's all not there, right? You don't have to worry about, again, going back and forth between two different databases, all right? Very convenient. Okay. So that's the data. We've already loaded it in. Again, for demo purposes, all you have to do is go to this, create a new database, go to that collections tab and click load the data. And it's going to load all that sample data, the same data you see here. And now you have a vector database to play around with. Very, very convenient. All right. What else is going to show you here? Oh, yeah. Okay. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Again, here, I'm going to restart this because I can't remember the last time I ran this particular notebook. Okay. So here we go. And again, load up the modules that I need. And here, again, I'm grabbing the secrets that I need in this particular case. I'm also getting the Atlas connection string and password, etc., and connecting to the database name. Okay, and I've got the API, the opening API key. So now I'm pulling them all in. All right. In this particular case, I have to make sure that, let's see, it says my IP address is 104. This is something I just have to double check real quick because network access. Okay. If I don't do this, there you go, 104. Okay. It won't let me in. All right. So I didn't leave it completely open to the world. So it only lets in specific IP addresses. So if you go down to network access, it will give you the ability to automatically detect what your IP address is and then open up the database to that IP address. Okay. So now I'm going to go and establish a connection. In this case, I'm using PyMongo. And so it's going to establish a connection to this particular database. And it's going to set up collection to point to that embedded movies collection that I showed you earlier. And then it's going to tell me that it's connected. All right, so we're connected to the MongoDB database. Great. Now let's run a couple queries. All right, so in this particular case, I'm just going to query the movies. And let's go ahead and run that. And it's going to output 10 movies, okay? And you can see this is very typical for JSON type database. You always output an ID because that's what you then look up to the next document and it's very quick and easy to find relationships between collections that way. Okay, so here will be the data. All right, now let's take a look at, that's just pulled out 10 databases. Let's find one by year. Okay, that's pretty easy. All right, now, what we want to do here is we want to use OpenAI and we want to, let's see here. We're just going to initialize and make sure we're connected. Okay, good. Again, we had to reconnect because we're in a different notebook here. And now we're going to try an embedding test. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to take this particular phrase, a futuristic sci-fi movie, and we're going to turn it into an embedding. Now, why do we need to do this? Because again, if you're going to search against a vector database, you have to search with numbers. You can't search with text, right? So it's going to search vectors against vectors, and that's how it's going to determine the answer or the response, all right? So that's what we did there, is we just simply said, okay, let's take futuristic sci-fi movie and turn it into an embedding of the same length, all right? That's the technically what's happening behind the scenes. All right. And let's see here. I'm going to skip past all this stuff. I think I already showed you all this. It's just simply screen captures of what I already showed you. And now what we want to do is we want to search. All right, so, oh, I forgot one thing. Okay, so once we import the data into the vector database, it's not automatically indexed. Okay, you have to create an index. And so what we're showing here is that if you go, let's see, I'll just do this real quick. If you go back into the cluster and you go into Atlas search, now I've already created this, okay? So sorry, it's already created, but you have to go and create in Atlas search this index, okay? And in this particular case, I just simply called it index plot embedding. It's a very boring name. And I would just recommend you go look at that documentation and just grab this format out of there and put it in. And this is how you actually create the index, which tells you what kind of index it is and what the fields are you're indexing, okay? So grab that out of the documentation. At the very end, I have a link to that documentation of my slides, right? But once you've done that, now you can go ahead and search against it, okay? So let's search against it programmatically. I think I already connected this. Okay, so that was very quick. All right, so let's do an embedding search. Let's see. All right, we're all connected there. All right. So now this is going to be fun. We're going to search for something in the database. So what I don't want you to do is give me the name of a movie. Instead, I want you to describe a movie. All right? Because that's what we have is a movie database. So for example, the one that I just ran earlier was imaginary characters from outer space at war with Earthlings. Okay? And it gave me some examples like Pixels. I don't know if you ever saw Pixels or Battlefield Earth or Falling Skies. Okay. So let's do this together. What would be an example that you would like me to search? Yes.
A Christmas movie where the guy meets the girl.
All right. So let's run that. Okay, I found 5 movies. 12 Dates of Christmas, The Perfect Holiday, Snow Globe, Scrooge? Yeah, I guess Scrooge, right? So, all right, it gave us 4 there. I don't know why it didn't give us 5, but it gave us 4. So, good, that worked. Let's do it again. Let's try another one. Anybody else want to give one? Yeah.
Royale with cheese.
Okay, that would be interesting if it was able to use that. Could. Oh, is it like that? Okay, Royale with it. That's right. That's right. Okay, so let's give that a shot. All right. Well, let's see. For some reason, Monty Python, but it didn't give us the one you were Pulp Fiction, yeah. So that might be too buried in the weeds of the description. Maybe more not all of the movie quotes. The quotes are not in the index there. Yeah. Yeah, but see, I'll bet you that might be actually looking for like specific words, whereas this is more possibly, I don't know.
Let's try Los Angeles-based, LA-based organized crime movie set in the 90s. If anyone can do better than that. Going off the Royale with cheese, that is.
Let's see what it does. Gangster Squad, Strange Days, Harsh Times, Colors. Still didn't get it. So maybe we need more than 1,500 and whatever vectors. Okay, so anyway, you can see how it works. And, you play around with this. Sometimes it finds it, sometimes it doesn't. Let's let's see. Yeah, okay. So we have some different examples here. All right. So that was basically the end of my demo. But we have to end on a good note. Let's end on one that actually works. So how about, what else do you want to try? Yeah.
An inspirational movie about the early days of a tech startup.
All right, let's see what it does. Nicotine at Tomorrowland. Interesting. Search and Destroy. It's a Wonderful Life. That is so strange. I would not have thought of that at all. What were you looking for? Any movie? Well, those are inspirational. How about we do this? Still gives a 6-day, a biogenesis, Space Raiders. Well, okay. Gave us some movies there I don't know. How about that is the only one I know.
How about like let's make it simpler. Inspirational movie about space. Sorry if that's not exciting, but we could take some more suggestions by all means.
I like space. From Earth to the Moon, Space Raiders, Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. I don't know this one. Koi Mila Gaia? Is it? Oh, wow. Okay. And Zathura, a space adventure. Is it about space?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I think it's our concept.
All right. Well, this might be the new way to find new movies you haven't heard of. Okay. All right. So we can wrap it up there. I want to end with just a couple of comments. First of all, again, if you want the source code, let me go back to this page here. This is a GitHub repo. My friend Suji helped me create this code. So shout out to Suji. And here's a bunch of links. Now, the links I'm sharing here with you are the product page, the docs for the sample code. So if you want to actually download or into your own MongoDB account, that sample code, you can go. There's some instructions on how to do that there. And there's a forum where you can ask questions about, if you're running into any trouble or have questions about VectorSearch, you can go to the forum. And then here's again the link to that code. And also, we are actually running in our docs at the top of our web page. In fact, let me show you this. This is actually cool. I should definitely show you this. Okay. So right at the top here, this will show up. There we go. So if you want to ask it a question, we are actually using VectorSearch for our own docs, and you can ask it questions. Like for example, how do I connect to MongoDB with Python? And what you'll see here, it says use a Python driver, and it gives you some sample code. Okay, this is using VectorSearch to come up with this results. It's being based on, I think it's roughly 30,000 pages of documentation, and it's using the RAG model. So, this is very similar to how like a ChatGPT environment would work. All of this code that we have here is free open source code that you can download and use yourself. And again, that can be found at github.com/MongoDB/chatbot.